Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call the Audit Subcommittee meeting for August 19th at 6:01. Member Hall, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, could you do the roll call?
Committee Member Bush?
Present.
Committee Member Hall?
Present.
Committee Member, is it Matute? Matute, yes.
Matute, present.
Matute, I'm sorry. Vice Chair Zerniskaya?
Present.
And Chair Snell?
Present.
We have a quorum.
I'd like to do a little agenda management. I'd like to move the swearing in of our new subcommittee member prior to the public input, if that would be okay with the members.
So moved.
Do we need a second on that?
Second.
All in favor? Rosebud, raise your hand.
Oh, and I'm sorry, because this is a teleconference meeting. All of our votes need to be a roll call vote.
Okay.
And just to clarify, that was Committee Member Hall who made the motion, seconded by Bush. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I'll do a roll call vote. Committee Member Matute?
Yes.
Committee Member Hall?
Yes.
Committee Member Bush?
Yes.
Vice Chair Zerniskaya?
Yes.
And Chair Snell?
Yes.
Okay, so motion passes. Okay, so our special agenda item is 2A, swearing in of new audit subcommittee member. Member Matute, if you can stand, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name,
I, Juan Matute,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of
an
audit subcommittee member
audit subcommittee member
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, committee member Matute. Now we're on to public input. Public input is permitted only on items not on the agenda that are within subject matter jurisdiction of the body. State law prohibits the body from taking any action on items not listed on the agenda, including issues raised under this agenda item. Clerk, are there any speakers for the general public input?
There are no speakers for general public input. However, I did want to ask if any members have Levine Act disclosures to make for the record. I'm hearing none. We will move on to item 1, public input, agenda items under special agenda items and consent calendar items only. We do have 2 members signed up to speak for the consent calendar, 3A. The first speaker is John Alley for 2 minutes.
Welcome, Mr. Alley.
John Alley, your published overview for tonight's meeting leaves out the fact that LA's county grand jury in 2014 labeled and ridiculed Santa Monica as one of, if not the most financially mismanaged cities of all LA County's 88 cities. Last meeting, Barry Snell was sworn in as chair. Barry Snell has ethical, legal, and financial issues. In case D1, 2001-17, the State of California Board of Accountancy and IRS provided notice of Barry Snell's indefinite suspension from his CPA and accounting practice starting June 6, 2007. Why? 1, practicing as a CPA without a license. 2, continuing to practice without a license and not informing his clients. 3, failure to complete basic continuing ed. 4, kiting and bouncing checks to the government, including fines. 5, breaking the law and not paying child support for his own kids. Credit checks are conducted on government leaders responsible for overseeing finances and audits. Even our first responders and applicants for SMPD have their credit checked, so there is less possibility for their being on the take. We've discovered missing and illegal transfer of funds in Santa Monica. Your auditing firm is compromised and sucks. The subcommittee, city manager, and staff review and edit the audits. We cannot and should not trust you, Barry, to chair this subcommittee. Report to the city council or to the public. If you cannot handle your own personal affairs, how can you make judgments involving Santa Monica's finances? Replace Barry Snell. Barry, resign. Or stay tuned.
Next item, next person.
Our next speaker is Denise Barton for 2 minutes. Would you still like to speak? Okay. So then that was our last speaker.
All right, let's move on to the consent item. Note, clerk, could you read any corrections to the minutes?
Yes, so item 3A is approval of meeting minutes for the May 20th, 2025 meeting. And I have corrections to the minutes. It's in the header. There are printouts on the dais. The meeting took place on Tuesday, May 20th, not Thursday. It also took place at the Santa Monica Institute room across the street and not in the chambers. I have a couple of typos on page 2 under 6A, just stating that questions were made on clarification of city staff's internal process to track financial and project data, and the ability to consolidate information to generate status reports. And then on page 3 for 7B, the question was, how does the city's procedures and controls compare with other organizations? And those were the corrections that I had for the minutes.
Okay, no other corrections. Can I ask for a motion?
Chair, I'd like to move adoption of the consent calendar, including the read into the record corrections to item 3A.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and
Need a roll call vote?
yes, Committee Member Bush.
I'm sorry, I had a question. Is it too late to
No,
ask a question?
go right ahead.
There was some There was some discussion about getting an update on the implementation of the text messaging system and the coverage of the calls by the call center. And I understand that that motion and that item, because of staff availability, will be put off to another agenda, perhaps the next meeting. But I was just wondering if that should be noted in the minutes, or does it stay on the record if it's not in the minutes?
It stays on the record if it's not in the minutes.
Okay, and then with that comment, I'll vote yes on the minutes.
Okay.
With that being said, can we get a roll call vote?
So Committee Member Bush was a yes. Committee Member Hall.
Yes.
Committee Member Matute.
Abstain.
Vice Chair Zunitskaya.
Yes.
And Chair Snell.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Our next item is item 4, public input on remaining agenda items. Are there any other requests to speak in the chambers? Seeing none, we do not have any speakers. I'll move on to the next item. Item 5A, staff administrative items. 5A is the 2025 financial audit interim fieldwork update by LSL.
And I need to ask the staff for a presentation.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here tonight and kind of give you an update as to where we're at in our annual financial audit process. So I've put together a pretty brief presentation to kind of go over what the audit plan for the year is and what we've done so far and what we have left to do. Clicker doesn't seem to want to go forward here. The keyboard, maybe? Okay, great. So this slide, just basically the primary members of the audit team. You have my contact information. My name is Ryan Domino. I'm the partner overseeing it. Calvin and Kaylee are my team members. So if you have any questions regarding the audit, you're more than welcome to reach out to any of us at any time, and we'd be happy to discuss the process and answer any questions you may have. So really the scope of our engagement, we are engaged on an annual basis to provide financial auditing services to the city of Santa Monica. The scope of this engagement is the city's overall financial statements. The annual comprehensive financial report is the document we're auditing, as well as the standalone financial statements for the Big Blue Bus Fund. So those are the kind of the main scope of what we're really looking at. We also perform what's known as the single audit, which is a compliance audit over the city's major federal grant programs. So we identify there's a rubric of identifying which programs need to be tested, and then we test those programs, making sure that they are in compliance with all of the federal guidance, rules and regulations for those particular programs. Additionally, we perform other compliance audits and agreed upon procedures for the city throughout the year, including transit procedures, South Coast AQMD audits, things like that, other small reports that happen throughout the year. So my responsibilities as the independent auditor are pretty straightforward. My job is to give you reasonable assurance that the financial statements that are presented to you at the end of the year, the numbers in them are accurate, they're reliable, everything is classified in the correct line item. Nothing got missed. Everything's where it's supposed to be. The big thing is it's not absolute assurance. I'm sure most of you know the difference, but we don't test every transaction that happens during the year. It's just impossible to do that. So we identify those transactions that are higher risk using concepts of materiality, sampling, other things, to really focus in on a risk-based audit approach. So that way, you're getting financial statements timely, but also with some assurance that they are accurate. We also examine internal controls, but the difference for me as the financial auditor versus your internal auditors is I'm only looking at your internal controls for the basis of identifying risk and where I should be spending my time at year end. I don't offer an opinion on those internal controls, but if we do identify any sort of deficiencies as part of the process, we will report them, essentially is where my role in that is. We also test compliance, like I said, so government auditing standards is a higher level of audit than a basic financial audit. We're required to not only test compliance with the federal award programs, but also any other contracts, state grants, debt covenants, anything that might materially impact the users of the financial statements. Opinion on whether or not you're in compliance, we would test that. Our opinion covers the basic financial statements, the notes, and then obviously compliance with your major federal awards. Everything else, our opinion does not cover that necessarily, but we do some sort of testing on it to make sure it's good. Some of those items are not limited to, but they include the management's discussion and analysis. That's not audited, but we do review it to make sure that all the numbers and the facts that are in it are consistent with our understanding of the city. The budgetary comparison schedules, same thing. We just make sure all the information in it is consistent with the audited numbers and that it's accurate. The pension and other post-employment benefit schedules that are in the back of the book, when we get to that audit, again, we check it, make sure it's correct, it's presented right, but it's not an audited number. And then finally, for the supplementary information, these are just the additional information that are in the book. It's combining statements, all the random little schedules in the back. We make sure it's good. We tie it out. We tie it to the basic stuff that we have audited, but each of these non-major funds might not get the same look that, say, the general fund will, just in the interest of materiality and GASB 34 compliance. So once we've completed our audit and we've got sufficient appropriate audit evidence for us to render an opinion, we will render that opinion at the end of the day, right? There's 3 types of opinions we can render as your auditors. So unmodified is what you're striving for as the auditee. You want to get an unmodified opinion, which is the highest and best that we can render. Modified would mean that everything's good except for this one particular item, and then adverse and qualified, you definitely don't want those types of things. So we work hard not to get there. One thing I do want to really focus in on is this is not a forensic audit. We're not looking for fraud primarily. We have to perform procedures to respond to fraud risks. They're out of the whole Enron thing that happened all those years ago. There were a number of auditing standards that came out that we have to do, but that is not the primary focus of our audit. They're kind of peripheral activities. So if we come across something that looks like fraud, waste, or abuse, we'll absolutely investigate it and report on it. But primarily, we're just interested in making sure those numbers as presented have sufficient evidence to back them up. That's kind of what our focus is. So our audit is broken into 2 phases. We completed the first phase already. We call it interim. It's where we examine the internal controls. We provide feedback to management. We evaluate and assess the risks. And this is where we plan and develop our final audit procedures. We did this phase of the audit back in April of this year, and I'll give a brief update on that, on the results of that here in a second. The final phase of the audit is going to be in November. We have that scheduled. And so at that point, we're going to do what everyone thinks the audit is, diving into the numbers, pulling the checks, confirming bank accounts, all that good stuff, testing the compliance, sampling, analytical procedures, all the various things that we need to do to render an opinion on the financial statements. I mentioned before we consider materiality. We can't test everything, so we have a qualitative and quantitative assessment that determines the significance of a mistake or an omission in the financial statements. There's a industry standard calculation that we utilize to basically say, okay, if it's above X dollar amount, we absolutely have to test it. If it's below, we're not going to look at it in the interest of efficiency of the audit. Finally, at the end of the audit, we'll communicate everything to the subcommittee, the results on any findings we have, if there's any fraud, waste, or abuse, if we have any difficulties conducting the audit, we will make sure to communicate on that. If we have any audit adjustments, let's say maybe there's a journal entry that we have to book to get the books correctly, we'll mention that as well. We'll report on that. If there's any sort of significant transactions that happen during the year or estimates or any sort of new and significant disclosures, we'll also discuss those as well. Just by way of interest, there is one major change in accounting principle happening this year with respect to compensated absences. So the city's PTO for the employees, vacation, sick time. The accounting for that has changed this year, so you'll see something in our report kind of commenting on the change in accounting principle. Our opinion will probably be fine based on that. We've been working with finance to make sure they're getting it right, but you'll see a comment in our report. It's not a bad thing, we're just highlighting it. So finally, we do expect to issue our report hopefully in December this year is kind of our goal, or early January at the latest. We're in coordination with the finance team, making sure the close is going well and that everything will be provided to us timely. And so far, we're looking like we're on target for this completion. So I mentioned we finished interim. So some things that I have to communicate to you as the auditor's areas of higher audit risk. So the first 2, management override of controls and improper revenue recognition due to fraud, these are not specific to the city necessarily. These are risks that as an auditor, I have to consider on all my auditees. I have to make sure that we have to perform procedures to make sure the management's not overriding the internal control structure. So these are 2 areas that are a risk on all my audits. It's not necessarily something we identified as a major issue here. Cash is, I'll touch on that. That was one area where we had a recommendation. We identified some of the bank reconciliations were completed, a little bit delayed, more so than we would like to see. So we offered a recommendation to management to improve the timeliness of the bank reconciliation process. And right now, we're going to follow up on it at year end to see if that recommendation has been implemented. So some other areas of higher risk is really P-card transactions. One of our other clients up in Northern California experienced a fairly significant fraud event with their P-cards. So just as a whole, we've decided as a firm to really investigate P-cards much more thoroughly than we would have in the past, just to make sure we're okay. And then capital assets as well, based on recommendations that we've heard in the past from the city's internal auditors on the capital asset process. We're going to look at that more closely at year end as well. So I mentioned we did P-card testing as a more enhanced thing. So we looked at a larger sample of these transactions, making sure, taking a random sample of people who have P-cards, looking at what they spent the money on, looking for any sort of fraud, waste, or abuse in that. And I'm pleased to report we did not find anything in the sample that we took. Okay, so that's kind of my update as to where we're at and where we're going. I'm happy to take any questions you have at this time. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, by the way, for the presentation. And also, I did hear your comment under the interim test results slide regarding capital assets. I don't know if you can see page 29 of our agenda. That's actually the presentation of the internal auditors.
Yep.
I was wondering if you could give us a little color on finding number 2.
I'm finding 2?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So finding 2 is talking about receiving and tagging of capital assets not being consistently performed and documented. This is something that the finance team here has reached out to us about what our views are on it and what we see other cities doing with this practice. And I have to say the city is not alone in this finding. This is a pretty common situation for a lot of cities not tagging all of their capital assets. One of the kind of fundamentals of internal controls for assets is when you purchase a podium or something like that, there's some sort of tag there. So it has a number, it's in your system, it exists, that type of thing. Cities are kind of in a unique situation where a large number of the capital assets that exist on the books are infrastructure related. So you're not going to tag your streets, you're not going to tag your right of way, you're not going to tag necessarily your buildings, right? You have other ways of verifying that these assets exist. So what we had discussed with the finance department is to implement a process by which things like computers, vehicles, other equipment that is much more at risk of wandering off, so to speak, that those sorts of items be tagged and controlled, whereas other types of assets, if they're not necessarily as capable of wandering off, don't necessarily have to be tagged as long as there's other means of making sure that they're still in existence. So it is a good recommendation, and we do make recommendations similar to it at other clients. But when you have a city with a large number of capital assets like Santa Monica does, sometimes there is a cost benefit of tagging everything. So you have to be a little more specific on your inventory counts, perhaps rotating counts, and what you're tagging would be our recommendation.
So for the items that just cannot be tagged, like a piece of pipe or a street, are you also looking at whether those assets are tagged or identified in the financial statements appropriately?
Correct. So when we look, we always take a fairly significant sample of capital assets throughout the year. So as assets are being purchased or constructed, like piping or street or right of way, we perform procedures to verify that those assets are not only in existence, because we're pulling the paperwork saying that the construction is in progress or it's been completed, but also we make sure that they are put into the right category. So when we see a construction project being completed, we perform procedures to make sure that it moved out of construction and into assets that are in service. So we do a number of procedures to make sure that they are correct and in the right spot. Yes.
Okay, my last question. I know that the internal auditors have a deadline of June 30th, 2026 for this item, but your deadline per your presentation is 12/31/2025. So this will be done when you're done. Is that right? Or...
Yes. So the internal auditors operate on a little bit different time frame than I do. My goal is to get the financial statements out as timely as possible. Whereas the internal auditors are really operating on a time frame that's a little different. They're trying to improve performance, improve the controls on specific items. Whereas for me, it's more along the lines of let's get the financial statements out as timely as possible for the bondholders and the grantor agencies and that type of thing. So there might be a little overlap. If this is a significant item, we review these reports. If it's something that is like a significant finding, we consider it for our audit. So this is an item that we've considered for our audit and why we're doing extended procedures on capital assets this year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a follow-up question on the capital assets
Yes.
For you. And is there a value threshold of capital assets that you would recommend needing to be inventoried on a regular basis?
Yes. So the city has a capital assets policy written into its financial policies and procedures. I forget exactly what that number is. I think it depends on if it's infrastructure or if it's like an equipment type thing. I'm sure the finance department, Oscar, you may know as well. 50 and 100. Yeah.
1,500.
50,000 and 100,000.
Okay.
So yes, any of those assets that are above that dollar range should be controlled, essentially, is what we would be looking for.
Okay, got it. And a question for Director Santiago or maybe a member of your staff. How do we inventory our property? Is there a centralized property management system, or do we have like hand receipt holders that are responsible for their department's equipment?
I can start. For the IT assets, we have an asset management system for IT, and the same thing for vehicle. Is there anything else?
For instance, here's my laptop. It's got a tag on the back. So my understanding from the discussions with ISD is these are inventory every 2 years. Also, all Big Blue Bus equipment is included in the asset management system that they run. The inventory everything every year, and then our fleet. So like the police cars, the trucks and the bulldozers and all that sort of thing, the refuse vehicles, which are very expensive, those are also in a different fleet management system, and those are also inventoried every year. And they are all tagged.
And they're maintained also in a separate fund, like we have a computer technology fund and also a vehicle management fund where the assets reside.
I think Member Kaya.
Yes, she has a question.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and your work on getting our audits done. I know it's not always, usually not easy, but hopefully it's a little bit fun. You had mentioned that the type of opinion that we would prefer to have, I assume, I understand pretty much all organizations would like to have an unmodified opinion on their statements. Has Santa Monica ever received anything other than an unmodified opinion on our financial statements?
So I've worked with the city now for I think 3 or 4 years, and in the 3 or 4 years that I've worked with the city, we've not rendered an opinion other than unmodified. And I don't believe, looking back even before that, when one of my partners was the lead auditor, I don't believe so. We've always been able to get enough evidence to substantiate the numbers in the financial statements.
So understanding that it's that the standard is reasonable assurance, not the absolute assurance, based on the audits that you have performed and your firm has performed. Would you say that Santa Monica generally has fairly good financial practices and accounting of our finances? Sorry.
So if you're asking me to offer an opinion on the financial health of the city, that's outside of my purview.
Not necessarily, not the financial health, just the statements and our tracking of our finances, okay. not the financial well-being of the city, just our statements.
Yes. So I work with a number of cities of comparable size and scope to Santa Monica. And I can say that the staff here do work very hard to maintain good controls over over the accounting. Every once in a while there's shortages in staffing that happen, and that's part of the reason for the delay in bank reconciliations this year. So things happen, but overall I do believe that the staff do a very good job in having good policies and procedures to make the numbers work.
Okay, thank you. And you had mentioned that there's a threshold for line items that may be tested. Mm-hmm. Would you be able to clarify what that threshold is, and does it depend on mm-hmm. what type of program you're testing or what type of department or anything like that?
So I can't share the secret sauce. It's like giving away the answers to the test, so to speak.
Understood.
But I can tell you that each major fund of the city, whether it's the general fund, the Big Blue Bus Fund, the various other special revenue funds, we consider like who uses the information for that fund, what is the most important thing to them, whether it's expenditures, whether it's capital assets, whether it's debt, and we make a determination to use one of those things as the basis. And then there's a standard calculation that we use to come up with an actual dollar threshold of, like, if we see a transaction above, I'm just throwing a number out, $100,000, it absolutely gets tested. If it's below $100,000, unless as we're scanning the document, it jumps out and it looks weird, we're not going to pull support for it.
Okay, so, yeah. Got it. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that clarification. And just one more question. I noticed in your presentation, it said something about a single audit over the federal award programs.
Yes.
Could you please clarify what that actually means?
Yes. So it's called a single audit because of the Single Audit Act of 1996. So it's just kind of that. But essentially what it is the federal government provides a lot of funding to the city of Santa Monica through its various agencies. Probably the number one agency is Department of Health and Human Services. City receives a lot of housing choice voucher money, so that's the number one program. It is almost guaranteed to be tested every year because it's such a sizable percentage of the city's federal funding. So I can tell you right now that will get tested again this year. But basically, there is a checklist that we go through, looking through all the different grant programs from the federal government that the city has. If it's over X dollar amount and hasn't been tested in so many years, that will tell us which programs we have to test. And then we will pull all the information for those programs, any reports that have to be filed with the federal government. We look at all the money that was spent for those programs, making sure it was in compliance with the grant agreement, as well as any other guidance that the federal government has for that. And then we write up an actual separate report on those programs specifically, saying that the city did or did not comply with the requirements of those grant programs.
Okay, got it.
And that report is actually the most important one for the federal government. That's the one that they review.
Okay, understood.
Mm-hmm.
And so just because it calls out grants from the federal government, mm-hmm. that doesn't preclude the audit from also testing other grants that the city
Correct.
Receives from other sources, correct? Okay,
Correct.
So those kinds of testing procedures are included in the general part of the audit, not in its own standalone audit like the federal
Correct.
Grants are.
So,
okay,
yes,
right.
So if the state of California gives the city a grant that's not federally funded, but it is material to the financial statements, we will test that for compliance as well. It does not get its own report. It gets kind of rolled into what's called the Report on Internal Control and Compliance. It's a little bit of like a companion letter to the auditor's report. And so we would report, if there was any non-compliance found, we would report it in that one, but it wouldn't be specific to that grant program, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, understood. All right, but there are procedures to look at those.
Correct.
So
yes.
Thank you. I appreciate your confirming and clarifying those. So that's all my questions on this item for now.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I had a follow-up question to those questions, which I thought were excellent. When will we find out the list of grants that are being tested?
So we will know that sometime in November. When the city prepares the documentation for us. They prepare a document called the Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Awards. It's one of our standard requests, and basically it spells out all the grants that the city has, how much was spent on it. And so we use that document as the basis to identify the programs that need to be tested. So I can tell you in November, we'll know which ones we need to look at.
Will it be obvious results of that testing
So
is presented?
So typically for the city of Santa Monica, we do the single audit, the grant compliance testing after the financial audit. So that report I would expect to be issued sometime in February or March. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Member Matute?
Thank you. So the Big Blue Bus has a triennial audit requirement for the county and the state. Is that something you perform, or do you work with another auditor that does the triennial audit for the municipal transit agency?
So for Big Blue Bus, the scope of our audit is they have a standalone financial statement. It's just the fund with the notes. We audit that number.
Okay.
And then there is a national transit database compliance work that we do.
Okay.
That's related to Big Blue Bus. And it just spells out some very specific procedures that the NTD wants us to look at. But for Big Blue Bus, that is the scope of our work.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing that there are no other questions, I ask the committee for a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Sorry, just to clarify, removing the staff recommendation
Yes.
to receive and file. Second.
And we need a roll call vote.
And I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with everyone's voice yet. Was that a motion from Committee Member Matute? Second?
That was Committee Member Bush.
Bush, okay.
And second by Committee Member Hall.
All, okay. So Committee Member Matute,
Yes.
Committee Member Hall,
Yes.
Committee Member Bush,
Yes.
Vice Chair Zunitskaya,
Yes.
and Chair Snell.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you
motion-
very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next item, the internal audit status report, and ask staff to present.
Great, good evening, everyone. Colleen Rosillas from Baker Tilly here with our internal audit status report. I'll just quickly share the report itself that is quite short and sweet. We have one project this fiscal year, as you'll recall, approving in May. That is the customer service performance audit. This past quarter, we worked with the city manager's office to scope that audit, and I'll go through that on our next agenda item. And then we do our regular kind of ongoing program management, working with the city as needed on internal audit items. So that is our status. Any questions?
Do you have any questions?
I do. Colleen, can you give us just the like a background on the audit and the internal audit and the findings that we report to on every meeting, just to give the committee a little bit of background on that?
Sure, of course. So the internal audit program is approved every year by the subcommittee, and we typically look at performance, controls, compliance, based on the results of our enterprise risk assessment. So we last conducted an enterprise risk assessment 2 years ago for the city, and that really takes a look across many cross-cutting functions of where the city has opportunities for performance improvement, but also reduction of risk overall. And it's a tool for us and for management. So we use that as kind of our guidepost as we're developing the program. Because the city's budget is relatively small for internal audit, we've done kind of 1 to 2 projects a year. And so this project, we had quite a robust discussion at the last meeting about where to focus the internal audit time and effort and get kind of the most bang for your buck. Over time, as we provide recommendations to the city, when we do our work, we don't do it in a vacuum, so we want to make sure that the folks who are going to be implementing the recommendations, that they're actually implementable. So we work with staff to make sure, number one, our facts are correct, and number two, the recommendations actually make sense and are practical. And so then Oscar comes back every quarter and reports on the status of those recommendations and whether they have been implemented. And that happens also on a quarterly basis. And we will provide, at the request of the city, best practice information, something like policy examples, for example, where we might review something to say, yes, this kind of checks the boxes and is in alignment. And then that helps to get those closed out, reported back to the community that change is actually happening as a result of the audit function. Oscar, was there anything else you wanted me to cover?
No, I think that's sufficient. And so the reports that we give to you are informed by that those findings. and we work towards closing those items out.
Makes sense. Yeah. Any other questions from any committee members? Seeing none, I ask the committee for a motion.
Move to receive and file.
Yes.
I will second.
Okay. I'll ask the clerk for a roll call vote.
Committee Member Bush,
Yes.
Committee Member Hall,
Yes.
Committee Member Matute,
Yes.
Vice Chair Zunitskaya,
Yes.
and Chair Snell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Along to the customer service performance audit report. And staff, do you have a presentation on that?
So in your packet, there is a 2-page scope of work. We, over the past couple of months, have worked with the city manager's office primarily to scope this performance audit. We have not kicked off the audit yet, and so we're here just to give this scope of work to you ultimately as an FYI, but to get any feedback as we embark on the audit. So the scope of work here is we're really focusing on first the 311 program, identifying opportunities to improve efficiency, effectiveness, and customer service across that function, as well as how 311 works across the city. So when we think about all of the different departments like code enforcement, building and safety, public works, finance that are involved in customer service, we want to make sure that 311 is being used effectively, and that also the chains of communication in both directions to make sure things are addressed, closed out, communicated back to residents and businesses are being taken care of. So the scope of work is here in front of you. I won't read it completely, but I'll just note that the real focus is on process improvement, streamlining processes, making sure things are as automated as possible so that we're using staff time as effectively as possible. And then we're thinking about improving service delivery, improving staffing alignment, and interdepartmental coordination. We anticipate that this project will take, I'm going to say 3 to 4 months. And it under the budget that has already been approved by the committee. Any questions about our scope of work or approach to this?
Any questions from any committee members? Member Hall?
Yeah, thank you for this. I think this is inclusive of your plan, but I just wanted to comment that I, in particular, am very interested in learning about the data and reporting aspect of our 311 system and how we are using that data to allocate resources to potentially address like trends that we're seeing in our 311 data, and whether we are taking into account like where the sources of the 311 data are coming, whether they are staff produced or if they are resident produced, or what parts of the city. I imagine our wealthier and more in-tuned residents probably utilize 311 quite heavily, and maybe our low-income, not native English speakers might not be using 311 as much. So I'd be curious to see if you are going to be looking into stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. We will be looking at use of data, and when we also think about, we're a resource-constrained city and have to make sure that we're making really good choices about where to put those resources, using data and making data-driven decisions is very important. So we'll definitely be looking at that.
And I member Zuniskaya.
Thank you. So just to clarify, are we doing both questions and comments at the same time?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I noticed that the scope of this seems pretty focused on 311. And I think when we initially were introduced to this type of audit, I had it in my head that it would be something a bit more broad. So I just want to get some clarification on why this is the scope is more focused specifically on the 311 system and the requests that come through there and everything related to that, versus including things like things folks might come in and get dealt with at the counter, or other things that folks come into City Hall for, or even our communication strategy and how we reach out to folks.
That's a great question, and I would love maybe Oscar or another staff in the room might have some additional information. When we met with the city manager's office to scope this, there was a lot of interest in this being the area of highest need. So how do we maximize our use of technology? How do we get people using 311 as often as possible so we can track data and so we have information on customers and residents so that we can make sure that we're making the best decisions and have information all in one place. But Oscar or anybody else, is there anything you'd like to add from the city's perspective?
No, just that 311 is our main point of contact for the customers. Now, as we interview the 311 team, they're going to figure out when a call comes in or somebody comes in, how do you send them to the counter, who they interact with, and then from there they're going to follow up. Baker Tilly's going to follow up and do more interviews on that process too, which addresses the counter. But it's not so focused on the counter; it's more focused on 311 because that's where our point of contact is for customer service.
Yeah, I see there was 55,000 311 requests over what is this the past year. That is fairly significant. I don't know how any small team of 5 full-time folks can handle 55,000 requests. So I love the concept of trying to see where we can use technology to augment and leverage the work that our amazing staff do. Is there how do I put this? Is there going to also be an examination of within what types of technologies we could use to leverage this? What types of maybe artificial intelligence-based technologies, systems, applications could be used to help staff work more easily? I think I've seen some demonstrations at various conferences of, oh, here's this little chat bot on our city website that helps answer basic questions. Is that going to be part of the work?
Yeah, so we'll look at a couple of things. The first, industry leading practices, and AI is, that's, I would say, the question of the hour, right? And so certainly it's coming up a lot. And you're right, at many government conferences, there are a lot of technologies that are purporting to be able to do a lot of 311 activities. So we'll look at that. We'll also look at what's in place in other cities and working in other cities. And then we also want to look at the city's current systems environment and say what's practical for the current environment. So, for example, if there was something already with this 311 system provided by that vendor that could be added on, those are the things that we would look at as kind of the highest priority versus going out and exploring a whole new system. So we'll go through that whole process with staff. We'll definitely work with IT on that.
Okay, and when y'all are looking at that, since you're going to be working with IT, I am fairly certain that information security will be a big portion of any considerations, and making sure that any data collected through this will be safe and would be protected from hacking and those kinds of things as much as possible. I know municipal governments have been a target of hacks and some other nefarious technology-based scams, so I want to make sure we're protected there. And the other piece I wanted to, maybe this might be a bit more specific, but as part of this, I would love to also look at how folks can check the status of 311 requests, particularly for folks who submit requests via phone, because I have the app, for example, and there's literally a map feature where you can pull it up and you can see all the 311 requests, and you can filter by, different types of requests and see where the concentration is. It's really cool. But if you submit your request via phone, I don't know if you get a specific case number or anything like that, so that you can go in and track it and see any updates. And I'm sure that there's folks who will occasionally submit substantially similar requests about the same thing. And, if there's an easy way to kind of link those up, either within the system that we have or within some other system that may potentially work better. And I think y'all have covered it in other audits that you've done previously, but one of the other things that I would love to see explored is how we can make sure that our different systems are talking to each other. Because if a 311 request comes in and it gets sent off to, resource recovery and recycling, what system are they using? Is it communicating? Is there a way to get information back and forth across both systems so that one's not updated and the other one has to be manually updated, or is just kind of staying out there? And let me see. Yeah, I think that I'm going to pause for now and see if anybody else has any questions or comments. Thank you.
I'm sorry, you have a question? Member Bush, go ahead. Well, my one question to add on to, and with respect to the technology, do we also take a look, and this might be a little bit different, Colleen, the actual physical equipment with respect to this? Do you get into that? If there's everything with respect to your audit, the actual equipment utilized in the different departments?
So for customer service, I think in general, the equipment is, I would say it's the computers and phones, folks receiving the information. We wouldn't be looking at equipment being used, for example, out in the field for code enforcement, or folks who are using any kind of equipment or anything specialized, maybe in, recreation, for example. I think that would be more around the actual operations of those programs and not the customer service function, which is kind of overarching. And I would say primarily it's a digital function or a verbal function at this point.
Member Bush?
Yeah, I just had a quick comment on Natalia's questions, which I thought were very good. And it's really an observation just for Oscar. It seems like it's a lot for the IT group to deal with all the things she raised, plus all the things we're going to hear regarding the update on the permitting system, plus all the things we're going to hear updating on the capital system. It seems like a lot of this is boiling down to pretty difficult IT challenges in a number of different areas.
It is, and that group is really taxed with a lot of work, but they do address data protection. We have policies and all that to address that. Again, they support our systems for asset management, so all that stuff. Yeah, but I do acknowledge that's a lot of work for them.
Let's see. I'm going to let Member Matute.
Yes. I see, the scope of this customer service audit seems largely focused on requests for services through the 311 system. When I first heard about the customer service audit, I was thinking about the disparate ways in which residents and others interact with the city to make payments. So everything from parks and recreation to library. I know when reserving a barbecue space around town, it depends on the park and who runs the park. So Virginia Avenue Park has a separate process than some of the other parks around town. But within the purview of the internal audit and perhaps even working with LSL, it'd be nice to just get a list of all of the customer-facing transaction points for the city, so we know where people are actually sending their $110 for swim lessons. I think they're using Active for a lot of things, but I know when I reserve a room at Virginia Avenue Park, I have to get them on the phone and give them a credit card number, and that's just different than some of the other things. But it'd be good to get a comprehensive list. In my work, I've noticed the state of California is moving towards a comprehensive payment portal, as has the U.S. government, where everything just goes into a federated system that sends back the information to the agency rather than having each agency run its own thing. You get economies of scale and credit card rates. You get a single merchant account, and then you have higher visibility on, it's usually for income rather than expense, but you have higher visibility on controls over what's going on. So it'd be great to just start with that and then maybe, you'd find some things in this and then maybe move forward on customer payments, because I know the focus tends to be whatever finance administers, but there's other payments that aren't administered by finance that aren't as, let's say, streamlined at this point.
And member Sky? Oh, we already heard?
Sorry, I just had one more quick comment.
Oh,
That's
go
okay.
ahead. Go ahead,
Unless,
Tally.
unless there's any committee members who haven't gone yet.
No.
So another thing I kind of thought of as folks were talking, and I agree with committee member Matute's comments about trying to figure out if there's perhaps a way that we can get a comprehensive payment portal, because I agree it's very confusing. With the 311 program specifically, though, I would also, if we have the capacity to, and if it would be potentially within the scope, is look at a way we could leverage it to have two-way communication between folks who are using that program and the city, so that maybe there's a way to, and this may already be on there, and maybe I don't check the app as often as I should, just news and new information about the city and things that folks might want to be aware of, and just something where it makes it easier to access information, because I know that that is a challenge for a lot of folks, myself included, when I'm trying to figure out a program or figure out what's available, or it's not always the easiest or most user-friendly to try to find information, although that might end up needing to be a separate audit, because it seems like I may be suggesting things that are outside of the scope. But any way we could improve communication, I think, is always a good thing to explore within any audit we do here.
I don't see any other comments or questions, so I'm going to ask the committee for a motion.
I'll move to receive and file.
A second? I'll second it.
Okay. Okay, Committee Member Matute,
Yes.
Committee Member Hall,
Yes.
Committee Member Bush,
Yes.
Vice Chair Zernitskaya,
Yes.
and Chair Snell.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you, Colleen, very much. All right, let's move on to the next item. Presentation observers of the audit, finance audit.
This is item D. Yes, this is a file and receive of the report that we attached to your agenda. It provides all the updates that we've been provided and shows you the outstanding items. I know at the last meeting, you wanted an update on the status of the findings related to the permitting study. So we asked Armene Shaparian, our CDD director, to come out and give us an update. And if you have any other questions on the report as you review it, please let us know, and the next time we meet, we can set it up for an agenda. And I'll communicate with my colleagues that they need to be present to report on progress. So, thank you.
Armini, would you please? Thank you for staying.
Excuse me, I think we should make a motion to receive and file 5D.
Okay, are we at 5E already? So we need to do 5D. D as in David. Okay.
The That's a motion to receive and file.
Right. Well, do we have any questions with respect to it?
Sorry, Deputy City Attorney, would you mind explaining why we need to make the motion to receive and file before receiving the presentation?
Right.
Yes, because I believe she's presenting on item 5E, correct? Yes, so the
got
update
it,
was
yeah.
attached to the
Okay,
agenda.
okay.
It was 5D, so we should just close out 5D.
Correct, yeah.
Then we can move on to 5E.
I'm sorry, I can't see that. Can someone read 5D? I just can't read it.
5D is status report on findings and observations of the internal audit.
Okay, so maybe I'm not clear. I thought we were going to review each of those pieces.
But we need to make a motion before that, is that correct?
No, so Director Shapiran is here to present on 5E.
Right.
We have 5D in front of us and need to do something about 5D.
Okay.
So 5D is the report that we provided to you in
Right.
your agenda.
And that's
It has
why,
all the progress and the updates.
and I asked if there was any questions. Okay, Member Matute, there's a question on that? On
Yes,
5D?
I just have a general question on, I was reviewing some of the previous meeting materials and I saw some things that had moved from an in progress to a completed or an implemented status where areas of the city that I'm familiar with, and I'm like, well, one, the internal audit have identified something that was fairly complex in terms of maybe there's not a yes, no, in terms of work overload and staff vis-a-vis the staff reduction. And that had been moved to the completed status. And my sense and just interacting with this unit of the city is that that's an ongoing issue. So I was wondering what, who makes the call, what the procedures are for determining that one of these internal audit items is in progress and complete.
So when something is completed, we come to you and tell you what it is, and then we give you an update on what that completion item was.
Okay.
These have gone already in previous meetings where they've been discussed, and at that point they get close. But yeah, at the point where we have one that's going to be close, we'll come and tell you what it is what action we took, and how we resolved the item.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Vice Chair Subkaya?
I think that's me.
That's you? Oh, okay, that's you, okay. Because you pushed the button.
Yeah, 'cause I
Okay,
pushed this button.
Member Bush?
Okay, so I had some questions on the different areas, and I'll ask those, but I won't ask the questions on the permitting system because I understand we're going to have a presentation on
Yes.
that. Okay, all right, so real quickly on the airport property management, finding number 10, do you have a rough idea of how much revenue we need to generate?
To generate for,
To replace what's going to be lost when the airport ceases its operations. I'm just curious if that's a material number or not.
I don't have that information. Did you want us to
You
get
can
back to you
just
with
bring
this?
it back, yeah, or
Okay.
by email is fine. I
Okay.
just wondered, was it 10
For sure.
million, 50 million, or is it?
We can clarify that. We can get you
Okay.
clarification.
Okay, I'm going to ask a couple questions about capital assets, internal controls testing, which is the next part of this. And that is, did you have anything to add? LSL addressed a question early on in their presentation about tagging of assets. Was there anything else with respect to finding number 2 that you guys wanted to comment on, or did they pretty much cover it?
Randy, when we reached out to LSL, is there anything else that we need to make the committee aware of about the assets? Do you?
I need to pick up your voice.
The LSL, we reached out to LSL for the recommendations. Is there anything else that we need to do in terms of the assets? Are we following up with departments or?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so on finding number 1, it says that staff has started identifying assets that have been acquired by the general fund and will provide a list to the departments for review. Can you just explain what that means? Are we asking about all capital assets? Are we putting together a list, or what are we actually doing with respect to that sentence?
I don't have that in front of me.
This is the observation about doing the capital assets, inventory of the capital assets.
Oh, okay. Most of the movable asset, okay, so there's a disconnect of finance doing an inventory versus the departments that are responsible, fleet, Big Blue Bus, doing their own inventory. And so I think that's where Moss Adams' comment is that finance should really integrate those two systems together, the financial system and the, there's actually like a fleet management system that both the Big Blue Bus and the fleet management fund use. So we're going through the process now of identifying those assets that are in the fleet management system that also exist in the accounting system. Now, remember that fleet management is going to have all their vehicles in their system. The financial system only capitalizes assets that are greater than $50,000. Okay. So before, say, 4 or 5 years ago, say a police Explorer, even including all the equipment that's included with the vehicle, was not over $50,000. So that does not exist in the financial system, but it does exist in the fleet system. So what we're doing now is finding for all the assets that we've capitalized in the financial system, going to the fleet system and finding out what the vehicle number is so that we can cross-check those. But again, you're not going to get a one-for-one between the financial system and the fleet management system. But we are trying to create some kind of cross between the two.
And is this unique to the fleet system, or does this apply to like tools, for example, or different things that are used by different departments?
So if it's a tool like a wrench or something like that, that would just be expensed. Right. That would not be inventoried. But larger things like the fire department has a Jaws of Life, that would, well, I guess I should include fire. Fire does their own inventory of their equipment. So those types of things will be included. Now, anything that's federally grant funded over $5,000 will be inventoried. And that exists on both systems. So it's a matter of trying to tie these two systems together because we've never tried to sync them together.
Okay, so basically in the example of the fire department, your records for things $50,000 and up would Correct. Match with their records.
Right, so that's what we're in the process of trying to do now.
Okay.
So working with the other departments to make sure that they consolidate the information.
Okay. And the due date on that is June of 2026, is that right?
That's when we plan on, that's what we've targeted.
Right.
Okay, I had just
if you think about it this way, the financial system was never set up to be the physical asset inventorying. It's not meant to have that function. So now we're trying to see if we can get it to work with to sync the financial system with the actual physical asset keeping systems that the other departments have.
Okay, I'm going to skip over the questions on the permitting system. Couple of quick questions on the HR organization assessment. What is the difference between, this was probably discussed last time, I just don't recall, 4A and 4B? And again, that goes back to the HR organization assessment.
So it's about automating the offboarding process. Right now, to offboard requires in-person transactions and closing out the process. This is about creating efficiency, so we're not having to do it all in person. And that one, the estimated completion date is December of 2025.
Okay. All right, I think I had one more question. Actually, the rest of these are on the permitting efficiency study. So let me hold off on those for now.
Natalia, do you have a question?
Yes. Actually, I'm glad you're on this page because my questions were on the HR organizational assessment. So there, I kind of, my brain zoomed in on finding number 7 and finding number 16. And I just wanted to ask for a little bit more color on finding number 7. I see the estimated completion date was changed from December 31st, 2024 to January 1st, 2027. So I just wanted to ask if you could clarify a bit about why it needs that additional time.
So HR was involved in the labor negotiations primarily in the first part of the fiscal year. That's primarily the reason they needed more time to complete these findings. If you want an update from HR, we can definitely ask for someone to come in next time and tell you what they're going to be doing to address some of these things, some of these findings.
Would the committee
that would be great. Even if it's just a written kind of summary, that would be super helpful.
For sure, we can have our HR folks.
I appreciate that. And then on finding number 16, so I understand this is specific to the HR programs, but when I saw, the city primarily uses paper forms and, that kind of thing, some other things jumped out at me, like expense reimbursements, and those needing to be paper as well. So is the work towards trying to digitize more of the touch points with city employees internally limited to just HR for this finding, or are there other areas where you're looking for improvement or potential ways that we could refine and make it easier on staff?
So a lot of the financial processes are digitized now and through our ERP system. We submit electronic forms, expense reports, receipts, all that's electronically submitted. This is more of the scope of the like onboarding forms or forms to transfer an employee, or just things that are required when you're submitting for a request for, some kind of a tuition approval, things like that. But the financial transactions are already digitized.
Oh, that's fabulous to hear. Thank you. So I think that was all my questions on there. So thank you very much.
Another question, Member Bush?
Yeah, just to follow up to her question, I noticed in the HR organization assessment finding 1B, it says something to the effect that civil service rules are barriers to efficient operations. That date was also pushed back, just like finding number 7. Is that something they could update us on at the next meeting?
Yeah, I'll have.
I'd just like to understand what
they can provide updates on all the stuff that's outstanding. But again, the primary reason why some of these things were moved were, HR was in the middle of labor negotiations.
Seeing that there aren't any more questions, I ask the committee for a motion to receive and file the provided comments.
So moved.
Move to receive and file. Second.
Okay, was that motion by Committee Member Bush, seconded by Vice Chair Zernitskaya?
Yes.
Okay. Committee Member Bush?
Yes.
Committee Member Hall?
Yes.
Committee Member Matute?
Yes.
Vice Chair Zernitskaya?
Yes.
And Chair Snell?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
We'll move on to item E. Thank you, Armin, for waiting. Let's ask staff for a presentation.
Of course, and she's got a turn. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. It seems like the topic I'm here to share with you seems to be the highlight. I'm just kidding. My name is Armina Chaparian, and I am the not-so-new Community Development Director because I have made it through my 6 months on the job. And the joke is 6 months in Santa Monica is equivalent to possibly a much longer time frame in a different jurisdiction. So I'm thrilled to be here tonight. And I've taken the last few months to try to understand the Community Development Department, the operations, the community. And tonight I wanted to provide you with some updates. In my understanding from everything I've reviewed, it seems that tremendous progress has been made in the last 4 years since this audit was conducted. And I think we probably expected to be a lot further along than where we are at this time. And I think some of that has to do with quite a bit going on in the country that's also affecting Santa Monica, including things like talks of tariffs, the fires we experienced, ICE raids, significant decline in international travel, which is impacting travel to California, It's impacting travel and tourism in the city of Santa Monica. We are continuing to make significant updates to our municipal code, looking for ways to create new efficiencies and expedited processing that helps move projects along in the city. And in looking at ways to fulfill the study that was completed, we have taken quite a bit and put it online, looking for ways to create efficiencies, not just in our department, but in the city as a whole, looking for opportunities for more business-friendly operations in general. And we've made significant zoning code changes. There have been some challenges, as can be expected, and I think those challenges are centered around culture. Culture change in general is difficult, and changing that culture within our department and maybe in some other departments is somewhat challenging. Assigning one department to be responsible for a process that actually touches and impacts multiple departments in the city. So when we say permitting, for the general public, they just assume that permitting is in building and safety. But in order for a permit to be issued in the city, it actually touches almost every department. So there are multiple departments touching that cycle of an application that comes into the city. And also being able to rely on additional resources, which, as you all know, have been somewhat challenging to have in the last 2 years in Santa Monica. I did want to focus on a few things that are happening, and I think these are big things that are happening that will impact some of the pending items on the list. In particular, we are in the midst of a massive new permitting system implementation. So that will be a centralized land management system. Currently, we're using Acela. We are moving towards a system called Clarity. And this is a huge system. A lot of work is happening. It's literally happening as we speak. We are anticipating implementation of this in spring of 2026. As that happens, there will be a significant amount of outreach, tutorials, a lot of updates on our website. So a lot of the pending items would really become not so pending once we launch our new system. We have an item coming to council next month on 9/9. It's actually an item that's related to self-certification. This will be, I think this will create an additional level of opportunities for applicants. So if they're doing any kind of commercial tenant improvements on a project, they will be able to self-certify. It does not include restaurants, so it won't impact any businesses that are food use or restaurants, because those require additional licensing and certifications besides what they do with the city. But there will be an opportunity for smaller projects that are commercial TI projects where they can self-certify. We are working out those details, anticipate bringing that to council next month. In addition, I mentioned earlier, I've been here for a few months. I'm having an opportunity to do a deep dive on my own department's operation, really getting into the weeds when it comes to building in general and understanding, I mentioned the life cycle of a project. So what happens when an application comes in? How is that routed? Which departments touch it? And the big question I want to be able to answer is, where are the bottlenecks? As you all know, when we say permitting, people always assume it's just in one division. It actually is not. It comes in through one channel, but there are so many that touch it. So technically, we may have a resident call and complain about how long something took with the city. And if I go in the system and look, the turnaround time from building and planning may have been actually rather quick, but there are other departments that are involved in that permitting process. So I'd like to be able to understand, where are we having challenges in moving projects along, and are those challenges related to technology, staffing, resources, some other factors? Frankly, I don't have the answer to that yet. I can tell you I am physically going to be spending time at the permit counter, observing the operations. I have been doing drive-alongs with the staff in building and safety and code enforcement just to see what they're doing in the field. And I'm hoping that bringing all of the divisions together and really understanding that life cycle and the flow, we can begin to answer some of those questions that actually will not be answered with the new permitting system. This is more internal operations. And with the new city manager on board, he will also be looking at some of these things. So really excited to get the process going. We are also exploring new tools. Not only do we have this implementation that will happen soon with Clarity, we are hearing and seeing how AI is a huge mechanism that so many city operations are starting to explore and use. Quite frankly, there's a lot of AI mechanisms out there for building operations. So we are looking at some of those tools and looking to see how can we bring some of those tools to Santa Monica. For example, there's software out there that some cities are starting to use where if you are submitting plans to building, these AI tools can help you upload your entire application packet. On the back end, they have all the city codes. They run your application through it and they'll tell you what you're missing, what's outstanding. So before you even submit as an applicant, you can make those corrections. So when you submit, it'll cut down the time on the number of reviews the city would do because it's kind of gone through this process of having like a pre-check. So we are looking at some of those tools. There's dollar figures associated with it. You will hear about some of these initiatives in the news because City of LA, City of Malibu are going to be using some of these tools with the fire recovery efforts. The state of California just entered into a big contract with an AI software specifically for building operations. I just want you all to know we're exploring some of those same tools and looking for ways to see what that cost would be for us, what the cost would be for the applicant. Is there ways that that cost could be absorbed by the applicant versus the city? But there are a lot of new tools hitting the market, and I think we need to be opportunistic and start to, as we're going through this process of launching a new centralized land management system, also look at ways to use other tools that could help with creating more efficient processing for our residents. And lastly, we have recently launched our business concierge initiative. And that really is a mechanism that if someone is wanting to do business with the city and they've gone through 311, they've contacted the city, but they just need a little bit more help, we are creating a way for them to, once they've exhausted the other tools, where they go through the centralized business concierge system. And that actually goes to economic development. We've set up an email account. So everything goes to economic development. And this is really focused for our businesses who just need that extra hand in doing business with the city. One person, because we want to keep it centralized, in economic development is reviewing the inquiries coming in. Then we're assigning it to a staff member who becomes their ambassador, basically, and they're taking them through that process. If there's hiccups with other divisions or departments, and trying to see if we can get them to the finish line. Our biggest goal is to retain businesses. It's to help our existing businesses not just stay in business, but expand. And it's also to help a lot of our vacant sites. So if there's a way we can do that and handhold and take people through that process, we're going to do it. And all of these efforts I just discussed are also part of a lot of the work that our Economic Development Council subcommittee is working on. The chair is actually on that committee, and we met earlier tonight. We also have a economic development task force that's been assembled in the last few months, focused on 5 key areas, and all of it is based on looking for ways to create more efficiencies and getting to a yes and doing business with the city. And lastly, I'm also excited to share with you all that one of the items we've also done is we put out a request for proposals for third-party building services. We received a significant amount of responses from consulting firms and companies that specialize in building processing, building application processing. We are in the process of reviewing the top applications. They've already been pre-scored. Our goal is to have a few firms that we bring on as on-call services. And the reason for that would be we would use them for expedited permitting and also to offload any capacity issues we have with our building division. That was a mouthful. I wanted to give you kind of a holistic summary of all the different things we're doing. And I think you'll see the time frame for a lot of the items. There's a good 6 months to a year that we've pushed things out. And truly the reason for that is some of these initiatives will not become a reality until our new system is launched. And as I mentioned, we're hoping to do that in the spring. That concludes my staff presentation, and I'm certainly open to answer any specific questions that any of you have.
Member Hall?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I have what I hope is an irrational fear that when Clarity comes online, we are going to experience a healthcare.gov fiasco where the whole system crashes on day one. So
I hope not.
I hope not too. So my question for you is, what is the testing regime that we're going to go through prior to implementation? And, what are the controls that we have in place to ensure that this goes smoothly? And will there be any emergency plan to roll back the rollout if it's becoming a work stoppage point?
We're not there yet, so I cannot give you a full answer at this point. I will tell you that right now our goal is to continue using our existing system, and we are not ready to transition into Clarity at all. We're not just there yet. I mean, we're literally in the midst of going through the workflows and getting to that place. I would hope that as we're further along, I hope Director Santiago will give me an opportunity to come back and continue providing you updates, because I know this is a huge initiative. And I can certainly bring you more information on how we plan on doing that, because your fear is the same fear we have. It's a massive system, and not just the system crashing, but also a lot of problems taking place. So somebody starts, just going through that, there will be quite a bit of testing happening ahead of time. And there will be a lot of tutorials happening ahead of time, and certainly a lot of trainings being made available for the different groups, user groups, that will be part of the implementation. And I can certainly bring back additional information of what that training and the tutorials look like as we get closer. We're just not there yet at this point.
Bush?
Yes, thank you. Very good presentation. I'm looking at page 35 of the agenda, which you probably have, the permitting efficiency study. And I wanted to ask a couple questions. First of all, on finding number 5C, and I heard what you said about the Clarity system and the challenge of getting that up and operating, but that will correct a lot of these challenges. But how does that relate to number 5C, which seems to focus on staffing? And I realize that the response says we're implementing a new system, but what's the link between that and staffing?
The link is actually, the goal of Clarity is not to take the existing system that we have and duplicate it. That really is not the goal. The goal is actually to take the existing system we have, look for ways to create efficiencies within that system, cut down on the processing time and the turnaround time for when applications, they're in and out. So when something comes in, how long does it take for us to process it? And looking for the new system to add mechanisms that simplify the process. So if there's 3 steps, is there a way those 3 steps could become 1 step? And in doing so, do we really need, one of the comments I've heard in the time I've been here is when a lot of the staffing changes took place in 2021, there was a lot of challenges because we lost staff in every department. Of course, that impacted the building division. Since then, we are not back to pre-cuts, but we are at a place where we have filled some of those positions that we had previously lost. The goal would be with Clarity is to create those efficiencies where we may not necessarily need to hire additional staff to do the work. That's part 1. Part 2 is we currently do also have some vacancies in the division that we are literally in the process of filling. I was on an interview panel earlier today for one of those positions. So while we're doing the system implementation, we're also working on filling the existing vacancies. And as I mentioned earlier, we are at a department level doing our own review of our existing systems. That also includes staffing, looking to see if our current staffing levels post the cuts, because we have filled some positions and we have some currently open. Are we where we need to be? Do we have enough staff to handle the capacity? Philosophically, I don't always believe that adding staff is the solution to a much greater problem. So I'd like to be able to identify what those real outstanding challenges are, because as I went through this study in the last few weeks, it was evident so much work had been put into identifying the problems, not just in the building and safety division, but in a lot of different places in the city. But we're still continuing to have that question come up of what's the holdup. So I'd like to be able to identify what is that, and because Clarity is not going to solve that. Clarity is going to help us with the actual processing and efficiencies. But if there's issues in other divisions, we should be able to also identify what those are so we can help bring those issues to the surface and resolve for them.
Okay, and that was perhaps also a partial answer to my next question, which again is on the same page. It's finding number 7, and it references significant changes across a broad group of stakeholders, which include city council, leadership, employees. And I understand that, you know, we're working hard on clarity, but what changes are you expecting from all those other folks? Or how do we, I'm just trying to understand, how do we go about getting whatever changes are required? Or what's the plan to do that?
I think it's a number of things. I think it's clearly identifying what is the city's process for permitting applications, customer service, and it's broader. I don't think it's just permit related. It's more customer service and how are we moving things along. I think this mindset is truly, I mentioned earlier, as an organization, we're working towards the optics of how do we get to a yes? And that yes comes in different forms. How do we provide better customer service? How do we provide mechanisms for folks to do business with the city? And truly that starts not just at the top with council, it starts with the executive team, it starts with the businesses, it starts with all of the stakeholders that we do business with. And we have been spending a lot of time in cultivating those relationships, both in and outside of the organization, and getting everyone on the same page. Because there's a lot we can do to improve a process, but that process can't be successful unless all the people touching it are part of that goal, right? And the goal in this case being more customer service friendly attitude in the city, better operations, better mechanisms for doing business as a whole. And that involves all of those partners. And I think that change mindset, it's going to be all of us working together. So if we launch a new system, then we have to make sure council's educated, the community is educated, the businesses are educated. So our goal would be to continue providing periodical updates for everyone. And I know earlier I heard one of the committee members mention communication, doing a lot of that communication piece as well to put good information out. I hope I answered your question. There's so many layers to it.
It sounds like the system, as we implement it, that's going to bring in all the stakeholders and get all the various stakeholders aligned. I had just a quick question on finding 8B and 8C. What is it that we're actually revisiting? I'm just trying to understand. It looks like this has been pushed back 5 years. What are we doing? Are we looking at a comprehensive review of the regulations or what?
Well, if I understand this correctly, the recommendation that was a result of this audit for specifically to 8B, it involved funding for grants. So I think we have not identified any new funding opportunities. We are in the midst of working on a small business grant program that would be really as part of our economic development recovery efforts, trying to provide small grants. So that's something we are working on. It is not something we've launched yet, but as far as was there additional funding identified for a new grant program, the short answer is no. Could that be something we explore for the future? Absolutely.
Okay, so this is focused on grants, not really extended permitting timelines. Okay.
But I did mention earlier, we've launched the business concierge service, which in my mind is directly correlated with anything we're doing for small businesses. So if a small business is having a challenge navigating through the city process for doing business with us, we are exactly.
Okay, great. Okay, the last question I had has to do with 10A, 10B, and 10C. I know there's no updates available, and I know there's a lot of work on the clarity system, but does that mean that the website has to wait, or can we possibly make some changes to the website to help folks out in the interim?
We are actually currently making updates to the website as we go along as part of the efforts of the Economic Development Task Force. One of the committees we've created as part of the task force is permitting and internal operations. So that committee is specifically looking at ways to continue making updates. And we've been doing small updates kind of on the back end to help create provide better information, make it easier to, our website is very challenging, as you all know. without doing a massive overhaul of an existing system. On the back end, we are working internally with ISD to make small incremental improvements that make it easier, faster to search for things. We're even taking the step further and centralizing some things. Soon we'll have like a centralized events calendar. So there are things happening. It just isn't in the way that it's laid out here as part of 10A and 10B, but we are making incremental updates as we go along.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Member Matute?
Thank you, and I appreciate the challenge that you have if this implementing some of these recommendations or addressing some of these findings. Just last month, I saw the confusion. I saw an illustration of 3D where in my building we have a project going on. The supervisor said it didn't need a permit. The building inspector said it did. The supervisor was out on vacation for 2 weeks or so, and I had to explain as the HOA president to several of my neighbors why their walls were going to stay open for 3 weeks longer than I had told them that was going to be. So I know that that seemed to be an internal contradiction with some of the cultural, perhaps human resources issues you were discussing earlier, but it is a challenge. My question, perhaps for you, perhaps for Oscar, is you mentioned there was some AI tool that the state had procured. Is the city able to take advantage of the leverage procurement agreements on the Cal eSource or Cal eProcure portal?
We are. We generally do some of that acceptance to competitive process rules,
okay,
which we can piggyback off contracts or any other solicitations that another public agency has done, as long as it meets our requirements.
Yeah, I've seen some of the work that's done for these statewide master contracts that appear there, and there's a lot of ways that they build in safeguards, especially when we get into AI and these IT tools for data portability. So you don't want to be stuck with one tool. That is the business model of so many of these firms. They figure out, oh, I'll solve the problems you have right now, but I'm going to create problems that are unresolved in the future. And so data portability is a really hard thing to specify in an RFP. But they try to do those types of things on these IT procurements, and that really helps. Hopefully they've made the right selection, but if they haven't, that portability is basically a risk mitigator. And so I'd encourage you to look, when possible, to procure through the state's leverage procurement agreements, because it does comply with all the state laws, obviously. But then they also can get better terms in terms of data portability, because so many of these businesses want to do business with municipalities in the state of California.
Absolutely.
Vice Chair Rosaya?
Thank you. So thanks for the updates. I know permits have been quite a talking point for a lot of folks and a pain point for a lot of folks as well. So I appreciate all the work that your team is doing to try to address this and try to help us get better. So I had kind of two questions, and one of them, you had mentioned that there's maybe a perception that permits take a while because they have to go through various departments, various teams, and committee member Matute just brought up an example of where there was a disagreement between one team and another team, and it led to a delay. So I just wanted to get some clarity from you about how clarity, pun not intended, would address this issue in a way that Excella doesn't and isn't.
I think the biggest advantage, and truly doesn't matter which system, but I think if we're at a point now where we are looking to implement a new system, we are making sure that A, everyone has access to it, B, the process is clear enough that nothing is sitting behind and not moving from step A to step B or step C. Everyone's trained on how to use it adequately. And to me, one of the key components is the reporting capability, and that we are able to do extensive reporting to show what's coming in, how long it's taking, how many projects each staff member is assigned, how long it's taking them to process. There are some significant challenges now as a department for us to be able to provide really good matrix, performance matrix, and reporting. In order to do that, staff uses different systems. And I think that right there creates a problem. If we're having to use 2 or 3 systems to generate reports, I cannot stand in front of council and with 100% accuracy tell you that the numbers I'm providing is accurate, because we are pulling from different sources. So I think the idea of going to one system that everyone is connected to, that has significant processing capabilities and reporting capabilities, is a significant step in the right direction, because then we can see who's assigned which project, how long it's taking them, and I can generate those reports on a regular basis. We've started doing more of that just in the last few months in all of our divisions, but to be able to do that in a way where we have a better story to tell and a better way of looking at operations, I think that's going to be a huge advantage. I think in the example that committee member Matute described, that I think is a little different. That is more of how do we train our staff so that everyone is using the same code section, the same interpretation. I think we have a bit more work to do on that end. I think a new system will create greater efficiencies when it comes to processing. But as far as interpretation, I think we have some work to do there, because I have seen some instances of that in my short time in the city, where depending on who's reviewing, there's different ways they're interpreting code. So I think there might be opportunities for some clarity on the code, some cleanup of existing codes that may be outdated. There's quite a bit of work to do. So I don't want to be an amateur and tell you that a new system is going to resolve all of that. I think a new system is going to centralize and create greater efficiencies and give us better reporting, but we still have some work to do internally from training our staff and how we're implementing codes and identifying the areas where we shouldn't have 2 different answers or 2 different set of eyes reviewing something. And I mean, that to me costs time, money, and puts someone at a disadvantage if they're doing business with the city. So there's definitely improvements we need to make that are not associated with the new system at all.
Thank you. I'm very excited about the reporting capabilities. I think committee member Hall had mentioned earlier on another item about wanting to have better reporting so we have better data to make decisions. And I think the council as a whole is a very data-driven council that wants to make decisions based on actual accurate information. So I'm excited that the system will help us do that a little bit better. And just to make sure that I'm understanding, can you confirm that with this new system, when there is a new permit that's going along the process, that different departments will be able to work on that, I guess, like work item all at the same time, instead of it having to go concurrently? It can go, what's the word I'm thinking? Simultaneously. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, it will be simultaneous. Everyone will have access to it. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, as we're further along, it would be great to share with anyone that's interested. I keep saying the cycle of a project. I think it's important for us to understand that. What's the ingress and egress of an application coming into the city? And how is that moved from step 1 to step 2? Everyone will have access to it, but there are some areas where one group can't approve an item unless another group has looked at it and reviewed it. And that's the workflow we're literally currently in the process of doing. And those meetings are happening. It's a huge group of staff from all the different groups that touch it, with the software developers and with the project manager from ISD.
I am so excited about that. Can't wait to hear more. and actually a follow-up to another question that Committee Member Hall brought up earlier about the public-facing rollout of using this system and concerns about the first impressions. I just wanted to ask, are we planning to do like a beta test of it with maybe, I assume that there's likely a number of folks who are maybe frequent or heavy users of our permitting systems that we could potentially invite to participate in a beta test of it to help find bugs and iron out potential issues before it's rolled out to the greater public. Is that something that we've considered or we're planning on doing?
Council member, I believe so. And having previously gone through similar implementations in other jurisdictions, we can do the beta testing, we can have the focus groups, we'll put together the community engagement plan. All of those mechanisms will be in place. But I think the best test is after we roll it out, as we start using it, keeping an active log of all the bugs that we're catching, because a lot of that we won't know until after it's fully launched. So I feel like a year, within the first year of implementation is when you truly get to experience the new system and get to go through all those kinks and kind of fine tune. So that will happen on its own organically as we launch the system. But prior to that, I believe there will be beta testing, and I believe there will be a communication strategy of how we roll it out. And definitely a lot of information will be put out to the users, and we will have training sessions for folks who use it and touch it, both internal and external.
Thank you. And final question, maybe this one's a little bit freeform. Are there any ways that we as the audit subcommittee or the city council could help support this implementation and help support communication with the public around these changes?
Absolutely. I mean, you're all going to be our biggest supporters and advocates. I think the goal would be that as we get ready to launch it, sharing whatever information we have with all of you are connected to so many different segments and groups in the community. We would certainly encourage all of you to be our spokespeople and help get the word out through all of your different channels. And certainly yourselves having the ability to, I'm sure we'll have and I don't want to misspeak for the group because I'm just jumping into it. I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to showcase the system to all of you. I think you all being able to share with your constituents what the system does and how it's an improvement compared to what we have would be a huge help. And definitely, as you're hearing feedback from your constituents, coming back and sharing that feedback with staff would be super beneficial to us.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
I mean, with the rollout of the concessionaire system, I know it's still early, but have you gotten some preliminary feedback on it with respect to it?
The business concierge? Yeah. I have, because I get to see the tracking sheet because I want to see what's coming in. It's interesting. We've gotten probably about 36 inquiries that have come in. Some of them are things that could be resolved very quickly if they use 311, or they're things that we already have the application that's on the website or the link that they need. So some of them are things that are already available. They don't necessarily need a business concierge to do that. So in those instances, it's very quick replies to them. Hey, that information is here. Here's who you can contact. Here's the form that you need. There are some things coming in that require a bit more work. For example, it might be a new business that's thinking about coming to the city. So they want to know, what do I need to do? Who do I need to talk to? Where do I need to go? In that instance, their ambassador, I'm calling it their ambassador is able to get them all of that information. We have some folks who have zoning questions that may require some dialogue with the planner. So we're able to connect them with the planner who can answer those zoning questions, walk them through some of the intricacies of their site. So it's all over the place, but it's coming in. In the short time we've put it out, it's coming in. So we're starting to route the inquiries and close things out. It is being used.
It's good to hear. I don't see any other questions from any other committee members, so I'll ask the committee for a motion on this item.
Move to receive and file.
Move to receive and file. Oh, Second.
Okay, thank you.
Did you get that, Clerk?
It sounded like it was Committee Member Hall and then making the motion and seconded by Vice Chair Zernitskaya.
That is correct.
Okay, Committee Member Matute,
Yes.
Committee Member Hall,
Yes.
Committee Member Bush, Vice Chair Zernitskaya,
Yes.
and Chair Snell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Seeing that there are no other items on the agenda, I'll state that this meeting has been adjourned at 7:50 this evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.